2, 1, 0.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
Oh, I'm on mute. The story of the year since COVID. I'm on mute. Welcome everyone to Talk Recovery Radio. My name is Giuseppe Ganci and I'm here with Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hi, Darren.
Hello, hello.
Hello, and there's all the replays that you can get us out through Apple, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify. So check us out, www.talkrecoveryradio.com, and you can subscribe to replay our shows. Darren, 7 years, hundreds of shows, thousands of guests. Feels pretty good.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Well, it was a big pleasure yesterday. Yesterday was Last Door's Youth Program's 25th anniversary. This show's powered by New West Recovery, which is made up of Last Door and Westminster House. And what an amazing experience. I saw you commented a bit on some of the social media feeds, but it was great. I mean, we didn't know what to do because COVID, for those of you that know Last Door, we like to throw really small events. We don't really like to do anything grand, humility. But so we had just a small kickoff event virtually yesterday with the hopes we can do something next year. And you know what? The energy you get from that big crowd, that was Recovery Day for those of you that don't know what that is, to the energy you get even if there's just a few people sharing their stories. There was a 15-year-old kid talking like, I only wish I had that vocabulary when I was 15. Hey, Darren?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and so needed.
Yeah, he went to rehab when he was 14. He's 15, going on 16. And he just said, I had no idea this was the life that I can get, and something along the lines like most of his friends that he's in school with,
Right.
like don't have the same view on life, and it was pretty powerful. It was powerful stuff. And then David P. sharing about the history.
Oh, the history, yeah. I mean, if there's people around still to talk about the things that, like, the treatment centers or the recovery houses or the beginnings, and because a lot of people only know how it is right now or how it is in the last little while, or when they needed to be in contact. And until you hear the stories of the beginning, you don't really know what you're a part of. So it's nice to have no idea. Yeah, it's nice to have David's remembrance of it all.
Yeah. And the struggles. I mean, it's crazy to think it's difficult to provide youth addiction treatment services in Canada, which, there's so many barriers and so forth to get, a 16-year-old in a treatment bed. Even if they desperately want it, there's wait lists and all that kind of stuff. And it's complicated, but you know what? Congratulations to everybody that's been part of Last Door's youth program for 25 years of doing the impossible, helping kids recover from addiction and healing families. I mean, there was a mom that shared yesterday, and I mean, just the healing she's had was pretty powerful. So if you didn't get a chance to watch the Facebook Live video, it's on Last Door's Facebook page. You can go there, and there's about a 45-minute video of the history and personal stories for Last Door's youth program. And some of the other things that are going to be coming out of that is 25 stories for 25 years. That's going to get pushed out on Facebook over the next year. And then come March, April, May, who knows, next year, there'll be an event open to the public because so many people wanted to be part of that virtual event, but we just couldn't accommodate with the public health orders. But we're definitely going to have a big style event for everyone that's been touched by Last Doors Youth Program and those that want to support the youth program. So congratulations. So Darren, we talk about recovery issues every Thursday. We're on Facebook Live and Zoom Live because of COVID right now, but we're also beamed on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5, a week behind schedule, so we can get on the show. So we're happy to still bring this to you, but every week we talk to various guests. We have 3 guests on the show today, 2 people involved in our first half of the show. Darren, who are we talking recovery with today?
Yes, we get to talk recovery with mother and son. Right here we have Ruth Spencer, who has authored the 13th Overdose, Parenting My Son Through FASD and Addiction. And of course, beside her is her son, Tim, who the book is about. Fantastic. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming on the show today. This is always a huge topic. A lot of moms watching our show, listening to our show, and you know, in the whole, throughout the whole spectrum of the struggle. So I mean, I don't know where to start. I'm probably going to go a little bit back and forth with you two, but let's hear from Tim first. Just you know, we don't have to go right back to day one, but a little background. I mean, 13 overdoses, I assume is what the book title is, what your life's about.
Yeah.
What were you using? What like, how does it happen 13 times? I think is a question in there. You know, was it on purpose? Were they all accidents? Just give us a little background on this.
Yeah. I was born with FASD, so fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and I started using drugs and alcohol at the age of 17, I think, and I'm 45 now. So, and I used like 5 days a week, and I started out with alcohol and weed, and it wasn't until the last 10 years that it was coke and heroin and speed, and yeah, it was, I don't know, it was more, I guess, self-medicating type stuff. I don't know, just trying to dull the pain of life, I guess. I was going through quite a bit with my kids and my ex and stuff, and so it was just trying to dull the pain and carry on. And then eventually I got heart failure, and just led to overdoses constantly. And at the end, and finally I was just sick of it and went into rehab. Now I'm sober for 3 years almost.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Yeah. That's awesome.
I mean, you know, that's the hope. I mean, it's just nothing but tragedy until something happens. What was it that, you know, did you know of the impact of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? Like, were you aware of this? Was there a lot of information provided to the family around this? You know, like, and what were you being told? Like why, how did that have the impact on becoming an addict or being addicted?
I'm pretty self-aware of FASD because my mom is pretty much, I don't know, pioneer in the situation in town here. And so I grew up learning about it, and I worked with White Crow Village and FASD Society. So it wasn't until that I'm actually sober that I can reflect and look back on how it affected me. And now I'm making, like, reading my mom's book gave me a totally different perspective on my life, because I thought it was just me alone facing the world. But now I see I affected so many people. It's quite eye-opening.
Isn't that amazing? You know, until you hear the other versions of the story, you know, like we can only become so self-aware from our own memories and our own perspective, but until we hear it from the others that were involved as well. And I mean, that's a huge problem within this, you know, family dynamic of going through the struggle. they often it's the addict that's going through the worst of it, like you said, the health complications, the FASD, that is such a focal point of the problem and the struggle. Quite often mom doesn't get the voice, and good for you, mom, for writing the book. I mean, I know it's inspired by very, very hard and dark events. Let me ask you, 13 overdoses. How, even after one, do you come to accept? Do you live in fear constantly? Do you at some point say, my mom, in her own words, told me there was a point where she actually hoped I would just die. And that sounds harsh, but it just reveals the truth of the amount of the struggle, of the concern, of the waiting, and to just be able to grieve the one time and then move on in life.
I can understand how she felt.
And I can too, and it sent shivers up my spine until that really sunk in. What was the whole experience like for you living through it? Can you give us some background on that for the moms?
I didn't realize how bad it was until it was over.
Mm.
And when I wrote this book, I realized that things got worse, steadily worse and worse and worse through the 3 years or 4 years that I was writing it. But I didn't realize that it was just getting steadily worse when I was in it. It was afterwards when Tim was better that I realized that we had had a terrible time.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, I remember hearing another, Darren's mom's story, but I was talking to another mom whose child has overdosed and is no longer with us. And she said it was like watching a tornado coming, but never hitting. And now the tornado's gone through, and that's the experience she had with her sons using, and now that he's gone, it's like the tornado. So it's not a sense of relief, it's a sense of like the tornado's over, and it's really like, a lot of people are going through a lot of trauma with the whole overdose crisis. So when you say 13 overdoses, like, did you go to the hospital? Like, did you get naloxone? What does that mean? And for our viewers, what is it? 13 overdoses? Like, did you come back?
A lot of naloxone, and then the most hospital trips, but then they'd want to keep me, but the addiction would just be like, I'd have to get back out there, and get back to the grind. And then the final time, it was just like, what am I doing?
So that's important. Final time. So the $1 million question that's going to, what was that final time? Because 13 times, I was in Portugal one day and I talked to somebody there who's head up and their healthcare system, and he's not in BC's overdose crisis. So I remember saying, there's people overdosing like 3-4 times, and he was just he was just couldn't believe it. He's like, that's on a path to suicide was his actual comment. So what made you keep going? And then what was that final moment? Like, can you explain what that final moment was?
I was worn out mentally, physically, and I was in ICU, and I was looking around, and I guess it was just a matter of looking at my surroundings and shaking my head and taking a self-check and just being like, what am I doing? And my kids were there, like not there, but I started thinking about my kids, like what's like next time I might not walk out of here. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to accept the hand that's being
given to you. And what was the hand? I mean, there's so many stories. There's no services. There's not enough beds. What was your story? Did you like go from the hospital bed to rehab? Was there, did you pay to go to rehab? What's your story?
The first person that came and visited me was a lady that, an outreach worker, that was always asking me, hey, you ready? You ready? You ready to go? And I would be like, no. We talked. It was a nice person to talk to, but it was always there knowing that the hand was there if I needed it. And when I came to in ICU, that she was the first person to come visit me. And the
Nice.
look on her face, it made me realize that what type of shape I was in, it was like, okay, well, this isn't good.
Do you
So,
mind sharing where you went to get well?
um, Comox Valley Recovery Center,
All right, shout out to Comox Valley
yeah,
Recovery Center. That's awesome.
best thing I
Congratulations
ever
for
did.
doing the work.
We went
And
up to visit there and they were wonderful people.
oh,
Yeah.
great. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great services in British Columbia. Like there
Oh, yeah.
really is a lot of amazing services, and
Yeah.
they don't get enough props, all
Yeah.
these service providers. So as a mom, you're you a lot of moms don't tell the story, like their kid is you know number one, and the airing the laundry, dirty laundry is not something a lot of moms do. I mean, I work in the treatment center. There's the moms that are all into it, and then there's the moms that don't even want to participate in family group, and just do your 30 days recovery stint and let's get back to normal.
Well,
So
I got used to
what
jail. I
you
got
got,
used to
yeah.
visiting in jail and going to court and hearing from lawyers and hearing from, I mean, at first it was the youth lawyers and the youth counselors and the youth probation officers, and then we advanced. And I mean, I was so involved in so much already that the drugs were just one more thing that we were doing together, and we just struggled through together. And it was wonderful when Lance just took that last, I mean, Tim took that last step and got himself moving on. It was wonderful. And now we've had 3 years of sobriety, and I just feel like I can retire.
You've been through it beside him through the worst. I mean, I couldn't imagine you not being able to enjoy the sobriety, and the recovery aspect as well. Ruth, can I ask, are you the mother that drank while pregnant?
No,
So this is an adopted relationship?
I didn't even get to enjoy the booze. I just got the results.
I've lived with them. I've lived with my mom since I was a year and a half old. So this is my mom.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
amazing. God bless to the moms and dads that have brought children in. Not knowing what's to come. You don't get a big history. You don't get like a lot of background information at the time. It's just sort of from the heart. And man.
All my adopted kids were born with FASD.
Okay.
And at that time, nobody was responsible. Nobody knew. People weren't aware.
Yeah,
we didn't know that FASD existed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now,
So 3 children that's amazing that you did that. And especially back then, like you said, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on co-occurring issues and just what FASD is. I mean, now there's a conference that UBC hosts every year that's really brings some innovative approaches on how to deal with that.
I've been teaching
sorry,
that.
Darren,
So
I know you got a question there, Darren, but I just wanted to ask, so you said something a little while ago, Tim, that, now that you're in substance free, you have an ability to work on your FASD. Can you explain that a little bit? Because so many people want to deal, day one of treatment, I want to deal with all of my mental health issues. And it's like, hey, why don't you just like eat, sleep, and, get a couple days clean? And there's a world out there that, loves that idea. And there's a world out there like, no, day one, we got to start dealing on everything. So can you explain that for us, for people? Like, what was that process and the awareness that you had when you knew like, oh, like FASD, I need to work on that?
My FASD, I found the drugs amplified everything. Like I always have 10 thoughts going in my head 100 miles an hour. And so when I was on drugs, that just amplified everything that made me angry. And my mom can attest to that. And I wasn't a very nice person to deal with. But now that I'm sober, I've learned how to like slow things down and journal and get my thoughts out on paper. And it makes me more relaxed to get it out and read it. And, I journal every morning And
Wow.
that's just part of my sobriety. And yeah, I don't know, I just learning more every day, I guess. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
how to
and
explain it.
that's a big aspect once you sort of, you know, get out of the life, get out of the grind, get out of that like
Yeah.
cycle. It's like, yeah, you're going to meet a lot of the issues at hand, right? You know, that have just been dealt with by using and numbing out. What is like, is there a specific treatment for it? Is there medication? Like, or is it just live the best you can, you know, with the awareness of how it, you know, impacts your moods and perspectives and attitudes and feelings and just sort of like anybody with any mental health, I guess it's just sort of like, I have to accept it first.
Yeah.
And then find, you know, ways of living my life. Is that what it's like?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Cool.
I just learned how to cope with it and learn how to go about it a different way, you know, like
You can
you have
say
your
that.
ways of doing it, and I just have to take that extra step to get to the same point, and I do it.
Maybe you have to do a little bit more than the person that doesn't have
Yeah.
that issue. I mean,
Yeah.
is that so bad, right? You know, when it
Yeah.
comes to like quality of life.
Yeah, exactly.
So the book, The 13th Overdose, Parenting My Son Through FASD and Addiction. So who's it intended for? You know, what is it? A memoir? Is it work? Like, is it a help book? So other moms that may have the same situation can get through? What's your goals with the book?
I think to help other people cope. Because everybody's situation is going to be totally different. But I think the really basic issues are probably the same for every mom, that you've just got to put up and shut up and just love regardless. I always say, all you've got in the end is your relationship. So just don't mess that up. Whatever else you do, hang on to the relationship with your son, because that's, in the end, that's all you're going to have.
Mm.
And that's what counts.
You know, Ruth, I don't think whether it's an adopted relationship or your own, that the desire for a good quality of life for your son would be any different. So this question is like, how you watched him struggle. How, you know, let's say he never OD'd once, there was never a threat of overdose. Would the quality of life, you know, be the same? Or did you get into a place where you just needed him to be, you know, to stay alive, and the quality of life didn't matter? Because I know this is a big one for a lot of moms, that, you know, they watch their son struggle in addiction, they want something different, and then there's an overdose. And now that's out the window. I just want him to stay alive. So the whole, you know, the resource or whatever the treatment may be is different. I don't care if my son's on medication for the rest of his life. I don't care if he smokes pot for the rest of his life and lives in my basement, as long as he's alive. What's your perspective on that? Because it's such a huge one for a lot of parents out there.
Well, I agree. You just want them to survive. But I had 5 children, 2 that I hatched, 3 that I adopted, and my youngest, also with FASD, died when he was 25. So I've had the experience of both, and yeah, this one I just wanted him to make it through, no matter how long it took.
Right, no matter what. So there was never a point where it's shut the door, don't talk to me until you're 6 months clean.
Never.
Like, so
Never.
That's, I mean, of course it could be a recommendation for one family dynamic, by all means, but in
Well,
this
I'm
case,
not saying I didn't get fed up.
Sure.
I definitely, I remember one time he was in the hospital and they called me in, he's overdosed again. And so I went up and there was various people hanging around and talking, and my son was grouching because he had to sit there and there's nothing wrong anyway. I only overdosed. Why can't I go home? And I decided I'd had enough and I went home.
What was
Sometimes
that
that's
like,
what you got to do. Yes.
what was that like for you, Tim? Like, I mean, I just think back, like the amount of, you know, doors my dad kicked in, the lengths that it was just sort of like I mean, I couldn't allow myself that amount of love. Like it was just like, you know, and I pushed away. What was your, like, did you need that? Did you, like, is in the end, was that a big aspect of you getting clean?
In my addiction, I always thought it was just me against the world and nobody else was there for me, blah, blah. Big pity party, eh? And like, I never saw the reality of things until now. And now I look back and I'm just like, holy, they were there all along, you know? And so, yeah, well, yeah, it's amazing what the addiction can do to you and blind you to things. And yeah. So,
Well, and you speak of a really big point of, you know, we get clean and sometimes like that's the point because the using was so horrendous, right?
yeah.
And I'm you know, I'm right on point with you, like, you know, not even in that first year, but I mean, so much happens, but that clean time or that continuous work on oneself, how only then are we able to see like what the truth is, what the realities were, you know, about who was there, who wasn't, or, you know, what it meant and what it didn't. And, you know, like, is that a big part of your work moving forward? Like how much more can be revealed? I mean, even like you said, you're a dad. I mean, you know, that so much more will come to light in, you know, your own life.
Yeah, I think so.
That's awesome.
The big part of my sobriety is my kids. The best high in the world is having a hug and them telling you I love you, Dad. You know, that's my new high right now is my kids.
How old are your kids?
11 and or 10 and 12.
Oh, so they were around during your using days.
Yeah, they see me at my worst and they knew what was going on, I guess. And so yeah, just the best thing I can do is be open about it and hopefully they don't take the same road I did, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big point. Like I've heard the notion before, like, you know, the love of kids, or it's not enough to get us clean, but it can be enough to like keep us clean, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just like so many dads that have gone through addiction or relapsed with kids. It's this like, how could I have done this? And I get that statement, but if we understand addiction and it's like, well, yeah. Like, what am I not going to put in front of, you know?
Yeah.
And so it has to be something that's sort of like more looked into once you're clean, like now this love and these relationships can have some purpose and some meaning that can bring, you know, a future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean,
so you have 3 kids with FASD. I wanted to, what kind of supports are there now that you are probably more aware of? So if somebody else is struggling at home right now and situations, what are some tips that you can offer them and agencies? I know you mentioned a society earlier. If you can, you know, maybe helps us identify what some services are out there.
White Crow is out there.
What's it called?
White Crow. It's a
White Crow. Okay.
Camp for children with FASD and their parents, and it's fantastic. Tim has worked with them for 5 or 6 years.
Longer than that.
Longer than that, before COVID.
Yeah.
And he's been across the country teaching doctors and lawyers and things about FASD.
Yeah, we do camps in the summer and then we do public speaking during the rest of the year, just talking about our lives and how FASD has affected us and our families and stuff like that, and what works and what doesn't work. So
So you're doing camps.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow. So look at that giving back, eh? From
Yeah.
13 overdoses to giving back. I
yeah,
mean, I always say this, recovery brings you back to life. I mean, what an opportunity to have that lived experience and to share it with people. And, you know, there's that saying, if you can do it, if I can do it, you can do it, you know, kind of approach. And, you know, you were in and out of jail for years, and
Yeah.
now, you know, you changed that, and you know, recovery helped you change that. So really appreciate that. Shout out to Comox Valley Recovery Center, I think is what it's called. Yeah. So
Yeah.
congratulations to them. And how can people buy your book and find your book?
It's on Amazon. Just look up The 13th Overdose by Ruth Spencer and it'll pop up.
And have you written books before? Like, is
Yeah.
this your so you have some other novels and so forth? And
Well,
are they?
no, I only write about FASD.
Oh, so you have other books on FASD? Okay.
My other book is about my son's death,
Oh, wow.
my
Okay.
youngest son.
Your young. Oh, and is that the one that passed away?
Yes, and I couldn't work on it when this one was in such rough shape.
Yeah.
I had to wait until he was sober before I could finish the book about my other son's death. I just couldn't handle both.
Mm.
But
Do you
that one is now published, and the 13th Overdose is now published. So there's two that anybody who wants them can buy them.
Wow, you write books. You have 5 kids, grandkids now. That's a busy day.
You wonder, you know, what the point is of all of this, and you know that we somehow in our minds expect life to be convenient and easy and you know just fun, and I just think, Ruth, like for whatever reason you decided to live your life and get these guys into your life, it is allowed for you to write this information and to, you know, connect people and to read the stories of the suffering that they may be going through, you know, and to not matter that it doesn't always have to work out with sunshine and rainbows, you know, that even such a tragic loss can spread, you know, the message that people need to hear. And that's what this show is trying to bring about, is that voice for anybody that needs it, that has a hard time, you know, bringing about themselves. So thank you very much for coming on the show and for writing these stories.
Well, let us add that although it was grim, people who have read my book tell me that it's funny.
Okay. Well,
I can't imagine you would sit here today without a little bit of a sense of humor.
Hold on a second. Hold on. This is a big point. When you show up to the doors of recovery or rehab or detox, it's like, oh, you know, then you go to a meeting like a month later, 6 months later, and everyone's laughing. And like, we laugh at our stories. Like, that happened? Are you out of your mind? Like, and you laugh with yourself, and everyone talks about the shame and the guilt. And that changes to, I'm not saying proud of our stories, but proud of the fact that we were able to overcome, you know, our stories. And yeah, if we can't laugh at it, like you know, the founder of Last Door, Dave P, always says, if you can't laugh at yourself, you're screwed. Like, you have to be able to, and because it's the best form of healing. So yeah, I can see why somebody would say that, because they're in the solution. It's just like, yeah, Tim, that was some crazy stuff, and like, you got through it. Now raise your kids, and you know, it's an amazing opportunity. So you're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, and we just finished talking to the author of The 13th Overdose, Parenting My Son Through FASD and Addiction. We got Ruth Spencer here, mom, and Tim, her son, who's recovering, 3 years sober. Congratulations. And now giving back to the FASD community and the mental health and addiction community. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us on the show. And if you come up with another book, Ruth, hopefully you have no more tribulations that require you to write another book. But if you do have another book, give us a ring and we'll have you back on the show. Okay.
Sure.
Awesome.
Indeed.
Take care, everybody. Great story. Very inspirational. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you,
Yeah.
again. Thank you,
All right.
Ruth.
Take care, Ruth. Take care, Tim. Talk
Yep.
Recovery Radio coming to you live every Thursday, noon to 1. We're on Facebook Live, Zoom Live, and of course on the radio, CFRO, Vancouver Co-op Radio. But we're not in studio because there's this thing called COVID. That's what it's called. Darren, we got our second guest on air. Who are we talking recovery with for the second half of the show?
Yeah, we're still talking recovery. Right up next and well, present speaking here is Dennis Berry, life mastery coach. He's been working with people worldwide for over 15 years, can now work with anybody anywhere via Zoom, and has authored the best-selling author, national speaker, coach, sober since 2003. And the book is the Funky Brain podcast is a podcast.
Yes.
And the book is Funky Wisdom, a practical guide to life. Funky Wisdom, I kind of like that. Think you're my kind of guy. What is it? What's the background of Funky Wisdom?
Sure. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah.
So years ago, early on in sobriety and recovery, my friends in my old programs, they used to say, "Oh, Dennis has funky brain again." So that's where funky brain came from over the years, because I would just go to these meetings and I was confused because, it's not about not drinking. It's about growing up and maturing and figuring the world out. And then it took me a long time to do all that. So I used to just kind of shoot stuff out of my mouth, and they were like, "Oh, Dennis has funky brain." So I was going to call my book Funky Brain, but I like Funky Wisdom because it implies growth and understanding that I didn't have before. And so I call my podcast the Funky Brain Podcast.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, I mean, I think we can all definitely relate to Funky Brain. The narrow-mindedness of life in addiction, it's very small. There is absolutely no world out there. I mean, I wasn't taking in any huge life perspective, that's for sure. What do you attain to developing that wisdom? Is it recovery? Is it reading, the 12 steps? Or is it just experience and travel and where did you find your wisdom?
Yes. That's a short answer there. When I was 5 years old, my grandmother said to my mother, "He worries like a little old man." So when I was 5, I already had all the fears, insecurities, and all the, "Oh my God, what's going on?" type of stuff going on, just like a lot of other people, but I just never learned to figure it out. And then when I was 15, I started drinking. So I never grew up. I never learned how to cope with any of those. Then you fast forward another 15 years, you take away my coping mechanism, and I'm faced with this big, scary world. And so the answer is yes. So experience. I started out in the 12 steps. And then in addition to that, there was additional growth that I had to do. And then there was going out and stubbing my toe and trying business and relationships, success, failure, heartache, massive love, everything in between, health problems, success, healthy. I turned into an athlete. And then, everything in between, I had to learn everything. And it's painful growing up in your 30s and 40s. So I think that's why a lot of people fail in sobriety, is because we like that instant gratification when we're like, "Whoa, this is hard, confusing, overwhelming. I'm going to just take this shot of whiskey and I don't have to feel that for a little bit."
So you have a personal story then. So you're in recovery yourself, and now you do motivational speaking. You're a coach and all that, and you wrote this book. So what's the guide part of this? Is this a guide for people in recovery? Is this a guide for everybody, families? What's let's try and figure out where we can fit people into this principles practical guidebook.
Yeah, I love that. A practical guide to life. And originally it was, when I started writing it, I didn't even plan on writing a book. It was just a bunch of stuff that was coming into my head that I felt needed to come out. And so I took a lot of the principles of the 12 steps and some other things I learned along the way. And I put together this 6-step program that anybody could do every day to just help you navigate through the pains of daily living. Like, I'm overwhelmed. this person is not behaving the way I need them to, this politician is doing this, or all these things that are overwhelming for us. We're like, hey, I came up with this principle that you've probably heard of called the how approach to life. How do I get sober? How do I become healthy? How do I have good relationships? How do I make money? Well, the answer is in the question, how? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So I first need to say, I need to be honest and say, things aren't going well. Something's not right. And once I can admit there's a problem, you can't solve a problem you can't admit exists. Once I admit there's a problem, now I can do something about it. And then I become open to listening to a new way of living. And then I become willing to apply those things into my life to make things change. And then life kind of unfolds that way. So in my book, I give practical examples and steps on how to approach that. And, you can really accomplish anything. You want to write a book, you want to prepare yourself for good relationships or get out of a toxic relationship, get sober.
Why would you want to get out of a toxic relationship? They're so fun.
Oh, yes. And they can go on for decades.
They can they? So I always love asking this question to people that come on the show that have books and podcasts. So there's that moment in time where you start recovery, and I know it happened for me. I'm probably sure Darren, and you're like, hey, I can improve this, and you go into that world of redoing the steps and, if meetings just did this, and if they just did this, and then that, then your sponsor, if you're in rehab still and you're only a week clean, they slow down. But how do you manage your sobriety, your recovery, your humility, your ego, and create a best-selling book? That is not easy. And so how did you do it and any warning signs, anything like that?
Right. Well, I can't say that I improved on the steps. I think it was it's a spectacular program. It's been around for a long time. And I just think there's other ways to reach people.
Okay.
I think it's a great part one. I think there's a lot of extra stuff afterwards. And I think that a lot of people get stuck in there and don't realize that there is additional work to do. Like, if you're in love with the 12 steps and you are finding your everything that you need there, continue to do that. I send my clients there. I say, look, if you're sitting alone in isolation and you don't know what end is up, go to a meeting and start talking to people where you can start saying what's on your mind and look around the room and people understand. They nod their heads and say, give me a hug and let's go talk and have some coffee and try to figure this thing out. And then beyond that, I think there's just additional work that everybody could do always, no matter what program you're in. There's always additional work that we can do. So that's kind of where that came from. I just like hitting different people on different angles. And I also think that everybody's like, wow, this is a great program. And it's not about not drinking. It's about learning how to navigate life. And anybody could do it. And that's why there's Overeaters Anonymous and Sex Anonymous and cocaine and marijuana and all everybody's anonymous, So I think there's just different ways to approach life.
Absolutely. I'm a member of a 12-step fellowship, and I don't know how many times I'm having that conversation, of the God conversation. And I have no religion in me whatsoever, but here I maintain this relationship to this program that suggests a relationship with a God. And, and so I've been able to personally, navigate my way through that. But I mean, the amount of conversation I have where that's the very first block, and, you're repeating a very common term, the how, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness of a 12-step fellowship. But it's just in a way where it's just you didn't mention oh yeah, then you have to find God. It's just you mentioned becoming open to, whatever the resource is required for the problem you just admitted. And that's often the conversation I have. It's just forget about God for a second. You're talking about having struggles in your marriage. You need to go to a marriage therapist. You need to go see a counselor. don't worry, like worry about God later. Like, what's this, this thing that's in the way of what's the resource you need? Like,
Yeah.
quite
Yeah,
simply.
and I one thing I like to say is like is look, AA is a great program, or whatever 12-step program that you're in, and it should be a supplement for living, but not a substitute for living, right? It's like, if you're in my opinion, it's like if you're sitting in rooms 2, 3, 4 meetings a day, after a year of sobriety, I think you're missing out on the point. The point is, like, I didn't know how to live, and so AA gave me a good foundation for that, and now it's time to go out and live and learn beyond that. And you're right. If you're having marital problems, go see a marriage coach or a marriage counselor or something else. If you're having a problem outside of there, go look for more help. I think another huge mistake is people are like, oh, it's okay, just stop drinking, but it's okay to eat a pound of chocolate and keep smoking and do all this other stuff. I think that's a huge mistake. I think the best defense against relapse, against cravings, is a healthy mind and body. And if you're pumping all that crap into your body, you're not
You're gonna
strong.
get what comes out of that.
Exactly.
Was that part of your process of becoming, like, I mean, to become an athlete, you pretty much you've changed courses in life, right? I mean, was that an overindulged act, or did you, like, was it sort of planned and
Well, I was a skier, pretty high level skier in my earlier years, and I lived in the mountains up in Vermont, and I did a lot of that. And then I moved out here in Colorado, and I was smoking. At the end, I wasn't any high level anything. I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now, and I had dark circles under my eyes, and I was eating fast food every day and smoking cigarettes, and my life was falling apart. And part of my story was that I had to stop pumping that crap into my body, which in a lot of cases is even more harmful than drinking. Now, eating chocolate didn't make me drive my car into things that didn't move, but it was still damaging my body, and it wasn't getting me where I want to go. So when I say I'm a life mastery coach, people are like, what does that mean? It means that first we have to remove the most harmful thing, which is keeping me from living, and that's the alcohol and the drugs or whatever other thing is keeping your mind foggy. And then let's get real. It's like, let's master every area of your life. Let's not just sit in rooms all day. Let's go out and figure out the financial pieces and the other emotional pieces that are keeping me from becoming as successful as I want to be.
Is it have you found, like, working with clients, I guess we'll call them, like, once they sort of get rid of that, the most problematic addiction or situation in their life, that there is like a new denial, like, I've done what I needed to do. Like, what do you have a philosophy around, like, what is it with us? Like, why don't we want to pursue? Is it just being so new and doing a lot at once that sort of overwhelms us?
Well, it's the harmful behavior, right? It's not addressing the core issues. So cross addiction is the biggest, most common thing going on out there. So I'm going to quit drinking, but I'm going to, smoke a pack of cigarettes every day, or I'm going to quit smoking, but now I'm going to eat a pound of chocolate, or I'm going to quit chocolate, but now I'm going to watch 6 hours of Netflix, or I'm going to watch porn, or I'm going to do anything but deal with my emotions. Remember, drinking isn't really the problem. It's what I'm using to cope with the problem. Is that, and it's my thinking, it's my funky brain, and it's been going on since I was 5 years old.
Yeah. Do we have to stop all of those things you just listed, the pound of chocolate, the porn? Like, do we have to stop absolutely all of those things prior to being able to do the work? Or is it enough to moderate in certain areas? You know what I mean? As a coach, how do you get to that?
Sure, that's an excellent question. So really, again, let's address the core issues right now. When I start working with people, the first thing we do is we want to find out what our harmful beliefs and behaviors are about ourselves and about our place in the world. So we take a good deep dive into what are our beliefs about ourselves in the following areas, like in your body, in your relationships, in your finances, your career, your spiritual life. Now, those pretty much cover life, like those are like the big categories of life. Now, what are our beliefs around ourselves in those areas? And where do I want to go in each of those areas? Okay, so now we're establishing goals. One of the reasons that we're so, addicted or trying to distract ourselves is that we're unfocused, right? So we want to get clear. What is it we're trying to accomplish here? Well, I feel really uncomfortable with my body. I want my body to look like this. My relationships suck, so I want my relationships to be like this. My finances are in the crapper, right? I'm at $50,000 in debt. I want it to be like this. My career sucks. I want it to be like this. So now let's pick one of those goals, and it's the one that you've been denying, delaying, and procrastinating on the most. And that's the one that's going to change your life the most. And when we start working on that goal, you become confident, you become secure, and you feel better about yourself and your place in the world. And you don't need to drink, and you don't need to eat a pound of chocolate or watch porn or sit in front of Netflix or scroll on your phone for 12 hours a day. You can look the world in the eye and become successful. That's what we do as a coach. We want to become successful in every area of our life. And then there's no room for our life for that harmful behavior.
Yeah, I mean, they always say, we find means and ways to use more, and your whole life is based because that's what you know. And then, a consequence may happen, like our guest earlier had 13 overdoses. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason why it took 13 and not 10. Nobody, I don't think, is ever going to be able to logically figure that piece out and create a prescription for that. So whatever that consequence was, it was inspiring that person at the 13th overdose to want to make a decision to change. But there's still those cravings and the desire to use again. So, one thing I've learned in this environment that I'm at is like, how do we make your life more interesting so you want to stay clean? Because nobody, is going to stay clean because they have to. I really don't believe that. It's like it needs to be a want. And, Darren said it earlier, like, just because you have kids don't mean nothing, but when you have a couple of days back to back and your heart opens up, then you realize it's like, there's an opportunity there. And I think that's what we as, addiction recovery advocates are trying to, and what you're doing is like, you need to redefine the purpose of your life. And, you have those aha moments at some point in your life where you're like, damn, I did that. And how do you not have shame over it? And how do you want to heal with it? That's the whole step 9 piece and all that, and step 10. So without being too 12-step heavy here, because this isn't a 12-step show, we're just proud of the 12 steps, that's all. So being a life mastery coach, assisting people with your book. So is it pen to paper? Is it just reading and meditation? Explain some of the top things that people can find in your book.
Oh, all of that. Yeah,
all of
absolutely.
that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's about establishing healthy routines and healthy practices to replace the unhealthy behaviors, because the unhealthy behaviors are what was keeping us sick. So yeah, when I wake up in the morning, if I grab my phone and start looking at Facebook and what some politician is or is not doing to help or hurt me, and what my family thinks about all that, and now that's the way my day goes. I get angry, resentful, fearful, insecure, and my day goes that way. But if I wake up and I read something productive and I sit in silence and I write down, how my day's going to go and what's going on up here, and do some exercise and drink a ton of water, that's how my day goes. I have a choice on how my day is going to go. And for a long time, I didn't have any of those healthy routines or behaviors.
Yeah, the freedom, eh?
Yeah, so I woke up and did a bong hit and started drinking whiskey, and that's the way my day went.
Yeah, and you think you have freedom at that time, but when you blow the smoke away, it's like, actually I didn't, because I was forced to do the same thing over and over again. We got a few minutes left. You have a podcast as well, the Funky Brain podcast. So tell us a little bit about that. Is it airs? When does it air? Where does it air?
Right. Well, our biggest following is on YouTube. We have a good following there. And I've interviewed, similar to what you guys are doing, all types of people, athletes, entertainers, authors, different types of people. And most of it started as addiction recovery based. And since then, it's all different types of, mental health awareness and different types of different walks of life, and talking about different challenges that life has to offer and some of the solutions. So it's a great fun show, a great way to connect, because like you, I was taught in sobriety that we had to be of service. And I was like, I don't have time to be of service. I have to take care of me and make money and stuff like that. So I've, arranged my life around living a life of service, help it reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's been the same, for my personal experience anyways, on coming into the show, with sort of this is how I did it, perspective, right? And then the countless conversations, and it's such a great way of becoming wise or adding to wisdom, is that like, taking components and finding what fits. And I think that's, or else it's just always going to be a fight of what's better and what's the best way and what has the best outcomes. And, it's just, it's very simplistic when it's, I think people do need to focus on something specific when they're, when they're, you got the weight on their shoulders, they're trying to transition their life, because there's too many things going on, right? You want to speak to that?
Well, I love, what you said is focus on something very specific, and we're all so unfocused. We look and we say, oh, that poor kid has ADD. We all have ADD. Look at all the stuff that's going around us, and we have our phones. We're staring at our phones and talking to 3 people at the same time while we're driving. And, the world is an overwhelming place right now. So when I talk about, let's go in and find out how we feel in those 6 major areas of our life, and then let's create goals. We pick the one thing, not 5 things, right? The best example I use is New Year's resolutions. Everybody's like, every New Year's, they're like, well, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, write a book, start a business, improve my relationships, and quit drinking. And 2 weeks later, they're like, I'm overwhelmed. So I'm going to eat chocolate cake, start drinking, and I'm not going to do anything. And next New Year's, it's the same 5 New Year's resolution. Nothing got done, and another year went by. So we pick the one thing to focus on. Now, you have to take care of your responsibilities. You have to pay bills and take care of your health and your life and your kids or whatever. But we focus on one major goal at a time and hit it at a high level, create specific steps to take on a daily basis, and crush your goals and change your life. That's what we do.
This is so powerful. You're talking to people here that really believe in, recovery coaching should be a government funded, government endorsed, government healthcare controlled environment where people, because what happens right now is we go to Google, I have a problem, and I find a service provider to fix that problem. But the problem with that is that's what this service provider does only, and a recovery coach is somebody that can navigate you through the entire system of care and train recovery coaches to know that. So they're not tied to, like last store where I work, we can't help everybody. We just can't. But everybody wants us to be able to help everybody. Well, it just doesn't work like that. It's just, this is what we do. And recovery coaches can know, okay, oh, this is what your goals are. This is an environment that could work for you, not should, could. And then this is an option. And I just really wish that, we've been trying to get governments to understand that recovery coaching is now becoming much more organized. 10 years ago, it didn't even really exist. So hats off to you. If you have a loved one that is suffering, you're suffering, and you went to a program and this is what you learned and you're just not getting all of that, take a look at investing in a recovery coach that can help you navigate through all those systems of care, because you may think you know everything, but really we don't. And 2 minds always work better than one. And the perspective that you can get from a recovery coach is very valued, and I endorse it all the time, and really wish that it would become the first point of contact, not just Google and calling up a treatment center, because obviously they have one thing to sell, their bed, right? So congratulations on your book, and your website is dennisberry.com.
Yes.
And you're on Instagram and Facebook. You can catch all of those links on Talk Recovery Radio's website. And does the podcast have its own website, or?
No, you can reach that through the website, dennisberry.com.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on Talk Recovery Radio. We really appreciate you being here, everybody. Dennis Berry, coach and author of Funky Wisdom, A Practical Guide to Life. Darren, it's always good to see you on Thursdays. I'll see you again, maybe before, but definitely next Thursday. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, powered by New West Recovery, live on Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM, and obviously Facebook Live because you're watching us. Thanks a lot, Dennis. Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Dennis.
guys. Have a great day.
Okay, bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us. See you all next Thursday.